How did the 9/11 attacks affect our trading relationship with the United States?
There were some hiccups, and I think largely as a result of border issues. But the guys involved all called, although actually at the time I shouldn't say guys anymore, although that's a generic, a non-gender word these days anyway. But the hardening of the border, the thickening of the border, and that largely had to do with procedures. And ever since, of course, there's been a whole series of initiatives by the Canadian government to lessen the hardness of that border. And in a sense, TPP is really an outgrowth of that, because TPP replaces the NAFTA. In terms of everything that's in NAFTA is going to be in TPP and then some. But the relationship with the Americans, it is still a pretty good one, but I think there is a lot of misgivings in Washington. You had some Republicans stood up the other day and thought they should replicate the great wall that they're going to build against Mexico. They thought that would help them around Windsor, or I'm not quite sure where they're going to put it, but that kind of thinking goes on. Even in the midst of all of this, the Democrats were thinking about, every time and if you go back and look at the history in particular, there was always some senior person in the United States who still believes to this day that some of the terrorists that were involved in 9/11 and some of the subsequent attacks came from Canada, and of course none of them did, except for the one guy that ceases lost somewhere on the West Coast, and an observant American customs officer picked him up in Seattle. But it's not I don't think it's a very good one. The Americans are takers on all of this sort of thing, in the sense of what they want is what you have to give, and there's really no negotiations and that sort of thing. I think the flow of information that travels across the border about Canadians and about people in Canada is a very, very large package of material, and once it crosses the border, you lose control of it and what the Americans do. And of course, there's been a couple of famous cases. Maher Rauer, of course, is the most noteworthy of them, in terms of they were given information and they clearly misused the information to the extent that they were prompted to misuse it by the RCMP is still a bit of an open question.